entrepreneur and real estate investor. I operate midterm rentals. Depending on when you're seeing this exactly in the future, we are hosting, or I am hosting, a midterm rental workshop January 25th and 26th. It'll be taking place live in Bridgman, Michigan, as well as virtual for those who prefer to join virtually. So hopefully you see this before then so you can join, but if not, certainly join another session in the future. So today I am overjoyed to have Katie Lyon with Furnished Finder with us. Thanks for joining, Katie.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So I, in particular, am excited to have Katie, not only because she's with Furnished Finder and because Furnished Finder is, really just so key within the space of midterm rentals, but also because Katie herself is an investor. So she's not, just coming at this from the perspective of, being with a key partner, but really having been in the trenches, operated her own midterm rentals, other types of rentals. And so she really understands that investor experience. So I think that's a really key and important perspective. So again, thanks for joining today. And I just wanted to kind of jump right in with a couple of, thoughts and questions that I hear a lot as I talk to others in this space. And so first thing I wanted to ask about is I've heard that Furnished Finder is gaining momentum with audiences other than travel medical professionals, which is what I think a
Yeah.
lot of people associate Furnished Finder with. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, it's like the number one myth about Furnished Finder is that it's only for travel nurses. And when we say travel nurses, I really mean like any traveling medical professional. That's kind of like our bread and butter, but now we're like a full blown bakery. So we've got a lot of digital nomads, a lot of interns, a lot of displaced families, insurance claims. We have a lot of snowbirds or, people who are just wanting to go live next to grandma and grandpa for the summer or take their kids to live somewhere else for the summer. Things like that. It's become a lot more a lot more diverse with our tenant types, and we're seeing that. We're seeing academics, we're seeing professors, we're seeing corporate is back big time, right? Even me personally, I'm getting a lot of inquiries and leases done with people who are traveling for work projects. It might be a 3-month assignment of a new construction building and there's an engineer coming in to run it, or a professor who's a visiting professor for a semester. It's all of these use cases are back, and they're so big. Traveling medical professionals are about a third of our traveler base. So they're still
Wow.
really, really big. And the other part of that is, as a lot of people think, oh, well, travel nursing is dying, or it's because nobody's traveling anymore on the medical side. That's just kind of back to par, right? Especially after
Mhm.
COVID, it's just settled back to where it was. The reason that that portion has gotten smaller is because the other portion has gotten so much bigger, right?
Ah.
We all work remote now. We all have the flexibility to go do these things. So that's really what we're seeing.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Well, that part of it being a third to me, that is a huge unexpected stat. That's really something, and it's interesting the
Yeah.
others that you mentioned, kind of in that list, because even snowbirds, that is. I know I myself, and I know we've talked before about how you have a property in a market that gets snowbirds, and I don't currently, but I used to have a property in a market that got snowbirds,
Yeah.
and you definitely traditionally, I would not have thought of finding them on Furnished Finder. So that's really great
Right.
to know for going
Yeah,
forward
and
as
we're
well.
investing a lot to make sure that they know about us, right? We're investing a lot to make sure that when there's a family relocating, or when there's a company sending their employees or their team out on a multi-month contract, that they know about Furnished Finder, because we're the largest marketplace for 30-day and up stays, and our landlords are perfect for it, right? These properties are great for all of these different types of travelers.
To me, when I think about as a midterm rental operator, having a couple of different centralized places that we can focus our emphasis, because, like I said, I don't have my property that I needed to market to snowbirds that I did in the past. But when I remember back to when I did, it was very challenging because there are certain markets like that you can get more visibility by going into specific Facebook groups, but it gets overwhelming because there's so many and
Hmm.
there's constantly new different ones. And so I know when I think
Yeah.
about, the list of different places that you sometimes need to list midterm rentals, it would be so nice to see that list be smaller. And so
Yes.
I'm really glad to know that Furnished Finder is really proactively seeking out, those other stay types. So very, very good to
Yes.
know. That's
Yeah, and
amazing.
we're doing a lot to make sure that they understand our platform and they feel really comfortable and secure on our platform too. I mean, when you think about places like Facebook Marketplace, it's almost like, you're crossing your fingers and toes and just hoping that this all turns out and you're not
Yep,
just getting scammed, but like we're working every single day and we have like a really reputable marketplace and we have a lot of measures in place to make sure that when we're investing and we're sending these travelers to our platform to become tenants, like they feel good about it, we feel good about it, you as landlords feel good about it, like everybody is on the same page. And that's just going to you know keep on moving forward with that.
absolutely. So thinking about some of the other things that, I hear others asking about or maybe not as familiar with or maybe need to be better educated on is how to work with the different lead types that exist within Furnished Finder.
Hmm.
Can you give us some advice on that?
Yeah, this is huge. This is like if I had the option to be like, okay, you've now signed up for your first listing on Furnished Finder. You must watch this video. Like this would be trying to get through because this is really like the essence of our platform,
Hmm.
right? It's communication both ways. So obviously tenants can reach out to you through direct message, right? They could reveal your phone number, they could call you, they could text you, heck,
Hmm.
they could FaceTime you if they want, right? We're all about giving the freedom of communication between the traveler and the landlord.
Hmm.
But really, the way that we deliver leads is in three ways. So the first one is a booking request. And that would be, Reagan, if I saw your property and I'm like, oh my God, that is perfect. I want to book it. Like, I am ready. Reagan, please contact me. Tell me
Hmm.
what's next, right? And they're looking at your property specifically. The next two types come from what we call housing requests. And a housing request is a form on Furnished Finder that a traveler can fill out. And it says, hey, I'm going to Chicago May 1st through July 31st. I need two bedrooms. I have a dog. I'm looking in this area. I really want a washer and a dryer. And I have, here's my budget.
Hmm.
So what we do at this in the Furnished Finder system is we spin that up and we say, okay, who in the area does that match with? Now,
Hmm.
if you have a property that every single thing the tenant or the traveler was looking for, you also have, we call it a matched housing request, or sometimes it's just called a housing request in general.
Hmm.
And you'll see that show up in your dashboard. And that's like us telling you, like, this is the perfect lead for you. But
Got
then
it.
it's up to you to reach out,
Hmm.
right? That tenant doesn't necessarily know you exist. They have
Okay.
not necessarily looked at your listing or your property. It's up to you to send them a message, to give them a call, send them a text, whatever. The other ones that come through are called unmatched housing requests, and those are when what the tenant is looking for kind of matches what you have, but not completely.
Hmm.
And we know that a lot of times with midterm rental bookings, there's some negotiation, maybe with price or length
Hmm.
of stay, or it might be, hey, they have a dog and you don't allow dogs because of allergies, but this is a golden doodle, so you're not as
Hmm.
worried about it this time. Or they were looking for a budget of $1,600. Well, yours is $1,700, but it's really awesome.
Hmm.
So that's where you can find a lot of gems. I've made a lot of bookings through there, but you have to be proactive. You have to go through there and you have to say like, okay, can I accommodate this need? Like, is this worth a conversation
Hmm.
or is it not? So there, but yeah, you've got to get in there and you've got to look at those. Have your notifications on. We will notify you when you get a new lead, and it's important, that you're reaching out and making those connections.
Absolutely. Now, I'm curious when it comes to the matched or the unmatched housing requests. Is there a set parameter for like how many miles from their preferred zip code or area that you would fall within that? I don't know if it's like 5 miles or is it, does it vary with an algorithm?
Yeah. We do have some that are based on location, right? Because obviously if you're 20 miles away from where they're looking, like it's not practical.
Right.
But it's just it's a set of the parameters. So it's also like, if they're looking for $1,200 and your property is 10,000, like there's not there's not an overlap there, right?
Right.
But what's nice is also we will call out in the details of those unmatched booking or unmatched housing requests exactly what didn't line up. So
Ah.
you can look at that and immediately know, like, the difference here was they had a pet, or the budget was off.
Hmm.
I will say in some cities, one of the first questions in bigger cities, one of the first questions I will ask a traveler is, where exactly are you hoping to be? Right. And a lot of times they'll put that in the comments or the notes of their
Right.
request, but sometimes they don't. And if you have a really, really big metro market or something, like if you're in Boston,
Hmm.
you could have somewhere in Boston too, and it might not be close enough for that
Right.
traveler. So that's where it's like we want you guys to have that communication because there's just so many things that depend for different travelers.
Absolutely. That's so true. And every now and again, I'll get a housing request that's a little bit of an oddball in that, maybe it's a family that doesn't have kids in school, which,
Yeah.
to me, that's a big thing about, okay, we need to be within 5 minutes because we got to get three kids to three different
Yep.
schools. But if you've got a household that's two adults or three adults or something like that, they have much more flexibility, generally speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, and a
So,
lot of times it's about their situation too.
mhm.
Traveling medical professionals a lot of times have to be within a certain distance
Yep.
of the hospital or the medical center because if they get on call, they have to report within a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
But sometimes if it's, a contractor and the project's out somewhere in the middle of nowhere, they want to be somewhere in the middle of nowhere. But yeah,
Right.
sometimes like you said, if it's a snowbird or a retiree couple or a family who's visiting for a while, they might want to be wherever the right house or property is for them, right? So it's really like so dependent, just kind of based on their reasons for travel.
Absolutely. That was a great example that you made about, if someone's project's in the middle of nowhere. And I've definitely had, guests and tenants like that where, okay, if I'm within 20 to 30 minutes or maybe even a little longer, that works because I really want to be close to shops and restaurants, not
Yeah.
necessarily that
Yeah.
close to work. So, very,
Yep.
very good points. And that's exactly the type thing I was thinking about where it kind of breaks the traditional logic that you might think about of like how far away they
Yeah.
want to be from that preferred area.
Yeah,
So
and you'll find
interesting.
travelers who their main priority is to have a really low budget because they might be a student, they might be an intern, they might be a medical pro and they're, just want to keep housing low. They might be a traveling family and they're trying to save money for their next adventure or whatever. But then you'll find travelers who, prioritize location more or prioritize a fenced yard more or prioritize. I've had travelers contact me who they just want to be on the top floor of a building because they
Mm-hmm.
hate having anyone above them. And I'm like,
Right.
okay. And you have to remember that what is important to someone is not important to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you ask those questions. And that's where you also can't get discouraged if you see these unmatched leads and you're like, well, this isn't what I have. This isn't what I have. I always remind people, I'm like, our average booking is 3 months. So you need 4 good leads a year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't need a million leads. You don't need, right? Like, you can't house that many people. You need
Absolutely. Great
four
point.
good leads on average. So it's like, it's just kind of adjusting your standards to know that, like, when you get a really good lead and you get a booking, it's usually for, 3 months or so. So you don't have to be right for everybody.
Well, for sure. And something that you mentioned kind of resonated with me because it's a little bit outside of what I've traditionally dealt with. But I had one property that was what I would consider for our area to be a low budget property. And truthfully, I would have never set it up. It was a new setup that was for a specific request for a specific client. And then after they left, we then had it available, and the floodgates opened up because it was a price point that was
Hmm.
hard to meet in that particular area. So
Yeah.
for me, that also just validated that, okay, what ended up happening in this case is we let that apartment go because we had some challenges with the property manager, with the
Yeah.
building. They weren't
Yeah.
responsive, that sort of thing. But it validated that, like, okay, let's try to find something else close by because we could have like filled 10 of those. And again,
Yeah.
that price thing, if that's what's most important to them, then you have to have setups for different scenarios. And I can
We
imagine,
do.
when I think about some of the requests that I see coming through, I know that people are often struggling to find things to fill those lower budget
Hmm.
requests, which brings me to another
Right.
question. Okay, so tell me about, and I don't know if you've done this in your own properties or what advice you have for operators when it comes to renting room by room. So maybe you have a two-bedroom or a three-bedroom, and Furnished Finder does offer the option to have room by room or
Yep.
full units. What kind of advice do you have for folks on that?
Yeah, I have not rented by the room in our properties. We have one property, it's a 3-bed townhouse that we have considered.
Mhm.
We did have three like medical professionals moving in there together, so we did a lease with each one of them, but it was just for we had them each sign a copy of the lease. But we have not done by the rent by the room, but that's always like an option for that property in the back of my mind. But
Sure.
we've actually had several people rent that property who were like a couple or even an individual who just wanted more space. And they said like they might have family come visit them. They had a
Hmm.
dog. It was like great. So I would say just because you have a property that's larger doesn't necessarily mean you have to rent by the room, but it's a fantastic option. I would just say that you really want to be proactive, right? I would say you really want to make sure that everybody has their own storage space. If it's a bedroom that has a small closet, get them a dresser, get them, a wardrobe, something like that. Give them plenty of space. Get a bed frame where you can put stuff under the bed if you can, so that people can keep their stuff private. Individual door locks, I think, are huge just for privacy and everybody's sense of having their own personal space. I think I would always be inclined to do it per bathroom,
Hmm.
right? So, and we've talked to quite a few landlords who have done it this way. Maybe they have a 3-2. Well,
Hmm.
they rent the master suite and then they rent the other two that share a bathroom together.
Ah,
Because, we're adults and we like to have our own bathroom.
absolutely.
But then I think it's just really important to communicate expectations and rules and policies. And then I think it's just important for you to make sure that these two people are compatible and that they know what's happening, right? You want to make sure that they know, hey, this is a rent by the room situation. Here's your private space. Here's our guidelines for, kitchen, laundry, shared spaces. And like, here are our rules as a property manager, as far as like if there's any disputes. But I've heard so many people having really, really good success with it
Hmm.
because they are professionals, right? It's not like you're going on vacation in Miami Beach and you're going to share your Airbnb with someone random, right? It's like you're sharing with someone else who is on a contract, or, it might be an intern or a grad student or something. Like, it's this use case, and the tenant type is like they're very respectful people. So I think there's been huge success in it. I think it's a great option. And I think it's a great option for if you need to get creative to make things work,
Right.
right? It might be a good option, if you're looking at a new acquisition with the higher interest rates. Run the numbers as a whole unit and run the numbers as a rent by the room. See what you can get. You can use Furnish Finder as a tool to look up and see comps and see what are people charging for a rent by the room or a whole unit in this area, right? What if I am pet friendly? Like, what you can use it as a tool for your investments too. That is huge for me and my family's business. Anytime we're like, hey, we're ready for the next property, I'm like, all right, just like you would dig into the MLS and you're going to
Mhm.
look at comps, I want to know, what's going on. And then you put together the pieces and you say, okay, here's what I'm confident will work. And then you go for it.
Great advice. And that's so true. I think just using the data as a tool. And I know one of the things that you can see on Furnished Finder is you put in the area and then it shows how many searches have been done. And I don't know what the
Yeah.
radius is, but it'll show close by towns. Do you happen to
Yeah.
know offhand what the like placement rate is? Like when it shows that number, is there a certain percentage that have been placed through Furnished Finder? Or do you know how that translates? And I know that may sound like an odd question. I don't know if I necessarily worded it
Yeah, I
exactly
don't
right, but
know.
like how that flows through.
I look at the stats. The stats page is all, it's a reflection of the data and the searches on the site. What I like to look at, some people will look at the stats page, and if you're, it's furnishedfinder.com/stats.
Hmm.
You have to log in to see it, but it's free for anybody.
Hmm.
An account to make on Furnished Finder is free. And you can type in, I could type in Denver, Colorado, where I'm at, and it'll show me how many searches and how many map views, things like that.
Hmm.
I actually don't like to look at the numbers. I like to look at the ratio. I like to look at the ratio between searches and requests, right?
Mm.
Essentially, supply and demand.
Sure.
Um, because really, the numbers are just, they're numbers, right? And they're fantastic. If I tell you there's 2 million searches in Denver, you're like, okay,
Right.
well, great, but like, how much supply is there? Like, tell me more so I can put some material behind that data. Um, so that's what I like to look at. And then I look at the soft side where I will go into Furnish Finder and I would look at Denver and I would say,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'm looking at this area of the market, and I would zoom into that part of the map and I would say, okay, I'm considering having this type of property, and
Mhm.
narrow it down and try to look at what type of property you have or you're considering getting, and then look and you can see, like, do they appear to be booked? What's their
Mhm.
pricing like? What are their photos like? What kind of amenities do they have? And amenities, I'm thinking like free washer dryer, things like that, not
Mhm.
surfboards. But, you know, kind of get in there too and get like a soft feel of that supply and demand too. And that's going to give you a pretty good picture.
That's a great point. And, it really is. It's looking at your competitive set and saturation, really. And I think that's huge. And I
Yeah.
try to articulate that sometimes when people ask me about specific areas, because it's not this quick, easy, like, is XYZ a good market? It's
Right.
like you really do have
Right.
to look because, like you said, you only need 3 or 4 requests a
Yeah.
year based on the average stay. So,
Yep.
maybe it's a small area, maybe the population's not that high, but there's nothing else available. So that's a whole
Yeah.
different situation.
Yeah. My properties are all nothing crazy.
Very
Like, they're
good.
very simple properties in the middle of the country. There's like, they're not in Miami. They're not in, they're simple, they're clean, they're good. They're places for people to stay when they need a place to stay. When you're traveling for vacation, it's somewhere you want to go. And you're dealing
Right.
with really one type of traveler, you're dealing with a vacationer, right? Sure, you have different budgets and different types of vacationers, but with midterm rentals, it's like you can have everything from maybe a grad student who's trying to save every penny they can, all
Hmm.
the way up to a displaced family with an insurance claim that might want a really large single family home, right? Like,
Yep.
you have to kind of decide where are you going to land in that spectrum.
Good point. Excellent. Okay, so last question for today. I'm thinking about the calendar integration and those types of tools. Tell me about how that works today and any new things coming up.
Yeah, the calendar. Everybody hates the Furnished Finders calendar, and that's okay. That's okay. Right now, I mean, at the time that we're recording this, the Furnished Finder calendar is tell us what day you are available. Well, it's not really efficient. So
Mhm.
we are releasing our brand new calendar. You're going to be able to track your tenants moving in and moving out. You're going to be able to integrate with iCal. You're going to
Ah.
be able to block off dates. If you're like, I need to replace the water heater on this week, you're going to replace
Hmm.
it. And that's going to automatically show your availability on your listing. So not only is it upgraded, but it should make like managing an accurate listing be a lot better, which should make the leads we give you a lot better. Everything with this calendar upgrade is like, it trickles into so many different areas that it's really going to elevate. The other really, really cool thing that we're doing, and some users might even have this in their account right now, we've
Cool.
kind of been trickling it out to see what people think of it. It's called our listing performance panel. So when you log onto your dashboard, it's going to show you like how many booking requests you've ever gotten, how many views you've ever gotten, how many people have ever clicked to see your phone number, how many
Wow.
have sent you messages? How many people have viewed your listing? So this is really cool because like we have one single family in our home in our midterm portfolio, and it is more for like insurance placements or family
Mhm.
relocations where it's like they have a little bit of a higher budget, but they stay for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, but when it's empty, it's a little nerve wracking.
Oh yeah, it
So I
is.
can go in there and I can see, okay, it's getting views, right? Or it's getting
Mhm.
favorites, it's getting shares, things like that. So that is meant so that you can take that information and you can improve your business. You can do what you will with your listing. So it's
Mhm.
not like you set up your listing and you sit back and you go, well, I hope that worked,
Right.
right? But you can really kind of dig in and you can get your own analytics. So that is something that like personally I'm crazy excited about.
That is exciting. I have not seen that and
Yeah.
didn't know about it actually, the calendar or the performance.
It's
But
like
to me, that
bonus.
sounds like a tool that really allows you to see when it's time for another property in an area. Because I personally am a big fan of clustering
Yes.
properties so that if property A is
Yep.
booked, you can say, oh, well, it's booked when you get a new request, but I have this one 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, whatever the case may be.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Love
All
that.
I mean, I have 6 or 7 within a couple miles of each other.
Wow, that says a lot. But
Yeah.
that having that kind of data available definitely helps, give you the confidence to make those kinds of
Yeah.
decisions. So good
And as
stuff.
investors,
Well,
like, what do we love more than data? It's like red roses on Valentine's Day, right? Like, yes, give me more. Like, I'll take it all day.
I am so
So
with
yeah,
you.
it's really cool.
It's
Yeah.
really great to hear all these tools and kind of how you use them as an investor yourself and some of these innovations that are, have already happened, but some things that are coming up as well. So, really great
Yep.
information just to kind of help the investors that I know will be watching this. So, thank you so much for sharing all of that today. I'm really excited to just see how this all progresses. And again, everyone, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.